The Department of Veterans Affairs has a program called the Fiduciary Program. The basic concept is not new. It has existed in some form for decades. The idea is that when a veteran is deemed unable to manage their own VA benefits due to injury, mental health challenges, cognitive conditions, a fiduciary gets appointed to manage those funds on their behalf. On paper, that sounds compassionate. On paper, it sounds protective. And yes, in some cases it genuinely helps veterans who truly cannot manage their finances independently. Nobody reasonable is arguing that those situations do not exist. But here is where things get complicated. Here is where the story stops sounding like a safety net and starts sounding like a trap. The criteria for triggering a fiduciary review has quietly expanded over time. What started as a system designed to help veterans with severe cognitive impairments has evolved into something with a much wider net. Reports are surfacing that veterans are being flagged based on broad, subjective assessments of financial mismanagement. We are talking about veterans who missed a bill, who had a period of financial hardship, who maybe bounced a check during a rough stretch after coming home from combat. Normal, human, financial struggles that millions of non-veteran Americans experience every single year without any government agency inserting itself into their bank accounts. Now, I want to be precise here because I believe in being accurate with you. The VA has maintained that the fiduciary program exists solely to protect veterans who are genuinely incapable of self-direction. But the gap between that stated intention and what some veterans are actually experiencing is wide enough to drive a truck through, and that gap is exactly what is generating so much fear and frustration in the veteran community right now. Think about the psychology of this for a second. You spent years, maybe decades, following orders, operating in high-stress environments, and then you come home. The entire promise of civilian life is autonomy. The promise is that you did your time, you served, and now you get to live your life on your own terms. And then an institution tells you, not asks you, tells you that some analyst somewhere looked at your financial patterns and decided you need a babysitter for your money. The emotional weight of that is enormous. For many veterans, that is not just inconvenient, that is a direct assault on their dignity. Here is another layer that deserves serious attention. When a fiduciary is appointed, that person or organization gains legal control over the veteran's VA benefits. The veteran does not choose their fiduciary in most cases. The VA assigns one. And while many fiduciaries or family members are trusted individuals who genuinely care about the veteran, that is not always the case. There have been documented cases, investigated cases where fiduciaries exploited the veterans they were supposed to protect. There have been cases of financial abuse, of veterans being kept in the dark about their own money, of fiduciaries making decisions that clearly benefited themselves rather than the people in their care. The oversight system has historically been inconsistent at best. So here is the tension that sits at the center of this entire issue. There are veterans who absolutely need protection. There are veterans who are being exploited by family members or outside parties, and in those specific situations, a structured intervention might be the only thing standing between them and financial ruin. That is real. That is valid. But the mechanism being used to identify those veterans is apparently so broad, so lacking in individualized assessment, and so devoid of meaningful due process, that it is sweeping up people who do not belong in the system at all, and once you are flagged, once that process starts, getting out is not simple. This is not just a VA problem either. It connects to a much larger national conversation happening right now about guardianship and conservatorship laws across the country. You may have heard about high-profile conservatorship cases in recent years that brought widespread attention to how easily legal control over a person's life can be established and how difficult it is to get that control removed once it is in place. Veterans are looking at those stories, and they are looking at what the VA is doing, and they are drawing lines between the dots. Whether those lines are entirely accurate or not, the fear is real, and that fear deserves an honest response rather than a dismissal. Now let me give you something practical because I do not want this video to just be about raising alarm. I want you to leave with actual information you can use. If you are a veteran receiving VA benefits and you are concerned about being subject to a fiduciary review, there are some things you should know. First, you have the right to be notified before a fiduciary is appointed. The VA is supposed to conduct a field examination and give you an opportunity to respond. That process exists. Know that it exists. Second, if a fiduciary is appointed and you disagree with that decision, you have the right to appeal through the Board of Veterans' Appeals. The process is slow and it is frustrating, but the legal avenue is there. Third, organizations like the Veteran Service Organizations, the DAV, the VFW, the American Legion, have accredited claims agents and attorneys who can help you navigate these situations. You do not have to face this alone, and you should not try to. And if you want personalized help understanding your VA benefits, don't do it alone. Join our private community, Veteran Benefits Blueprint. It's where we break everything down even more step by step, answer questions directly, and give you guidance and tools that have helped thousands of veterans get the benefits they earned. The link is in the description box below. We'd love to see you inside. Here's another critical point. Documentation is your most powerful tool right now. If you are managing your finances responsibly, keep records that demonstrate that. Bank statements, bill payment histories, records of any financial planning or counseling you have participated in. If a review ever does begin, concrete documentation of financial responsibility carries real weight. Do not assume that because you know you are handling your money well, the system will automatically see that. Show it. Put it on paper. And if you are a family member of a veteran who is genuinely struggling, and I want to speak directly to you for a moment, please do not let the complexity of this issue stop you from seeking help when it is truly needed. The answer to protecting vulnerable veterans is not to dismantle every protective mechanism that exists. The answer is to demand that those mechanisms be transparent, individualized, and subject to real accountability. Those two things can coexist. Better oversight of the fiduciary program and protection for veterans who are truly vulnerable are not mutually exclusive goals. What veterans deserve, what they have earned, is a system that treats them as capable adults by default, a system that starts from a position of respect rather than suspicion, a system where any restriction of financial autonomy requires a high evidentiary bar, a clear and individualized assessment, meaningful legal protections, and an accessible path back to full autonomy when circumstances improve. That is not an outrageous ask. That is just basic dignity. The reason this conversation matters beyond the veteran community is that what happens to veterans today often reflects what happens to the broader population tomorrow. The systems built around veteran benefits, veteran healthcare, and veteran oversight have historically been testing grounds for wider policy approaches. Pay attention to how this unfolds. The precedents being set right now have implications that extend far beyond the VA. I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you a veteran who has dealt with the fiduciary program? Do you know someone who has been affected? What has that experience actually looked like from the inside? Your real stories matter here. They matter because they add truth to a conversation that is too often happening only in policy documents that most people never read. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to see it. The more people who understand what is actually at stake here, the harder it becomes for these decisions to be made quietly without public scrutiny. And that scrutiny, that sunlight, is ultimately the most powerful protection any of us have. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we will see you in the next one.